The gentle hum of the breeze played through the trees in a quiet New York park. Children's laughter echoed faintly, mingling with the rustle of leaves. An elderly man, Mr. Thompson, sat on a bench by the fountain. His weathered face bore years of stories, but his once lively eyes had dulled since the amputation of his leg. A cane leaned against his side, barely supporting his frail form. From afar, a group of teenagers watched him. Snickers turned to cruel whispers, and soon they approached. "Hey, old man, what's with the pirate look?" one sneered, pointing at his prosthetic leg. Mr. Thompson froze. He had faced insults before, but something about their mocking laughter stung differently today. His hand trembled as he reached for his cane, trying to find words to defend himself. The bullies circled him, their voices growing louder. People passed by, pretending not to see. His voice cracked. "Please, leave me alone." Suddenly, a tall figure emerged from the crowd, calm, composed, and confident. Barron Trump stepped forward, his sharp blue eyes locking on the teens. "Hey," he said firmly, his voice steady and commanding. "Is this how you treat someone who could be your grandfather?" The group of bullies froze, startled by the sudden interruption. They recognized Barron immediately. His face was unmistakable. Whispers spread among onlookers as Barron's security team positioned themselves nearby, ready to intervene. But Barron raised a hand, signaling them to stay back. This was his moment. "Do you think you're stronger because you're in a group?" Barron asked, his voice calm but laced with authority. "Real strength isn't found in numbers. It's found in kindness." The teenagers shifted uncomfortably, but their leader laughed dismissively. "What's it to you, rich boy?" Barron's gaze didn't waver. He stepped closer to the elderly man, placing a protective hand on his shoulder. "It's everything to me. This man deserves respect. Look at him. He's lived a life you can't even imagine." Mr. Thompson's eyes welled with tears as he looked up at Barron. For the first time in years, he felt seen. "Apologize," Barron said, his voice firm but not aggressive. "Now!" The group hesitated, the weight of the moment pressing down on them. The park had gone silent, every pair of eyes now on Barron. The leader finally muttered, "Sorry," and the group scattered. Barron turned to Mr. Thompson. "Are you okay, sir?" The elderly man nodded, his lips trembling. "Thank you. Thank you." Barron sat beside Mr. Thompson, his towering frame a stark contrast to the frail elderly man. "Can I get you some water?" he asked gently. Mr. Thompson shook his head, still processing what had just happened. "You didn't have to do that," he said softly. "Yes, I did," Barron replied, sincerity shining in his eyes. "No one deserves to be treated like that." For the next few minutes, they talked. Mr. Thompson shared snippets of his life, how he lost his leg in an accident years ago, how loneliness had crept into his days since his wife passed. Barron listened intently, his compassion genuine and disarming. The crowd, initially curious, now lingered out of admiration. Parents whispered to their children, pointing to Barron as an example of kindness. One of Barron's guards approached discreetly. "Sir, should we clear the area?" he asked. Barron shook his head. "No, let them see." The moment was simple yet profound. A young man standing up for an elderly stranger and treating him with the dignity he deserved. As the sun began to set, Barron helped Mr. Thompson to his feet. "Let me walk you home," he said. The old man smiled, tears streaming down his face. "You're one in a million, young man." Barron walked slowly, matching Mr. Thompson's pace as they left the park. His guards followed at a respectful distance, their presence a quiet reassurance. The evening air was cool, and the city buzzed faintly in the background. "You remind me of my grandson," Mr. Thompson said, his voice quivering. "He used to walk with me like this before he moved away." Barron glanced at him, a warm smile forming. "Family is everything, isn't it?" Mr. Thompson nodded. "It is, but sometimes life has a way of taking people far from each other." When they reached Mr. Thompson's small apartment building, Barron stopped and took in the surroundings. The building was old, its bricks faded and windows dimly lit. It was a stark contrast to the luxury Barron was accustomed to, but he didn't flinch. "This is me," Mr. Thompson said, gesturing toward the entrance. "Thank you for walking me home. It's no trouble, Barron replied, glancing at the steps leading to the door. "Do you have someone to help you here?" The elderly man hesitated. "Not really. My neighbor checks in sometimes, but mostly it's just me." Barron's chest tightened. The thought of someone as kind as Mr. Thompson being alone tugged at his heart. "Do you mind if I come in for a bit?" Surprised, Mr. Thompson nodded. "Of course, if you'd like." Inside, the apartment was modest but tidy. Photos of a younger Mr. Thompson and his late wife adorned the walls. A single chair sat by the window, overlooking the street below. Barron sat on the couch, his tall frame almost too big for the small space. "You've lived a full life," he said, admiring the photos. Mr. Thompson chuckled softly. "I have, but it feels a little emptier these days." Barron leaned forward, his hands clasped. "You shouldn't have to go through this alone," he said sincerely. "Everyone deserves companionship." Mr. Thompson smiled weakly. "I appreciate that, young man, but life doesn't always give us what we deserve." Barron thought for a moment, then reached into his pocket, pulling out a sleek phone. "Do you have a way to stay connected? Family? Friends?" Mr. Thompson shook his head. "My old phone broke months ago. Couldn't afford a new one." Without hesitation, Barron handed him his own phone. "Take this," he said. "I'll get another." The elderly man's eyes widened. "I can't accept this. It's too much." "It's not too much," Barron insisted. "You need to be able to call someone if you need help or just to talk." Tears welled in Mr. Thompson's eyes as he took the phone, his hands trembling. "You're an angel, son," Barron smiled. "I'm just someone who believes in doing the right thing." Before leaving, Barron programmed his number into the phone. "Call me anytime," he said. "I mean it." As Barron left, Mr. Thompson watched from the window, clutching the phone tightly. For the first time in years, he didn't feel invisible.